Hello, it's Reija and welcome to another video. Today I am going to be sharing with you my May 2021 wrap-up. Yes, you heard that correctly, my May wrap-up. It's late, but better late than never. The first thing that I finished in the month of May was Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, and I actually had a relatively good time with this book. I thought that it was inventive, easy to read, it was bingeable. I basically finished it in like a couple of days. Once I got into the groove of the story, it was a very fast reading experience. I liked the character of Amari and I liked all of the sort of mentor characters that she has, and I liked most of the themes in this book. It takes stabs at things like affirmative action and classism and also like racial injustice. It pokes it pokes fun and commentates on the idea of legacy enrollment systems in, like, for example, in universities and stuff. There's this moment when Amari gets compared to other kids who are brought into the system to the magical world through legacy systems, basically nepotism. So it tackles topics like that. And long story short, it is basically about this girl called Amari whose brother has gone missing, and she finds out that her brother has been a part of this magical world, and she gets invited to join, and through that she gets the opportunity to find out what really happened to her brother. And I thought that it was really interesting, but there were some things that I didn't particularly like. For example, there is an antagonist who I didn't believe that, given the sort of restraints that antagonist would have had in terms of, let's just say, access and stuff, I didn't believe that they could have been the sort of mastermind that B.B. Alston made them out to be. I thought that it was, I wouldn't say unrealistic, but implausible. My suspension of disbelief couldn't quite stretch that far. Another thing that bothered me there, this is a minor gripe, but another thing that bothered me was that there was this instance where they go to this department where basically the department handles PR for the magical world and comes up with stories and fabrications in order to make incidents, like in order to explain away magical incidents to mundane people. And there were parts where they had fabricated events pertaining to the First World War and also the collapse of the Berlin Wall. And that to me is that is one of my least favorite tropes. This sort of alteration of a historical event that ends up taking away agency from the actual people who lived through those events. You know? No piece of history is so inconsequential that it gets to be rewritten or written over by someone, in my opinion. So that was, to me, like, I just personally don't like that. Especially like considering that we live in a world where events are constantly written over and not talked about, and history gets obfuscated and censored and stuff. So I just find that sort of thing where it is done for humor, like, hey, aliens came and destroyed the Berlin Wall because they were such philanthropists. I just find that to be very distasteful. So that was something that I didn't personally like, but that is just a minor thing. Another thing is that I felt that Amari and her best friend didn't get to spend much time together. Like, Amari has a roommate and a friend who becomes her close friend, but they don't really get to bond and spend as much time together as I would have wanted. So those were my main issues with the book. Other than that, I found it very enchanting, and I will definitely be reading the second part when it comes out. And I gave Amari and the Night Brothers 3.5 stars. Then I finished reading the Raksura books by Martha Wells, the books of the Raksura. The final duology to that series I finished in May. The first book was The Edge of the Worlds, and I gave that one 3 stars. Basically, a group of archaeologists comes to negotiate with the Raksura in order to take a sort of like an envoy of them to this ancient city that may be tied to their like forerunners and ancestors, and they need access to that place that only Raksura may be able to help with. And this book basically starts like a longer arc that is told in two parts, in 2 books. And I gave this book 3 stars because while I thought that it was very entertaining, and I got to see a bunch of my favorite characters, and we got more expansion of the world and different cultures, I felt that it was a tad bit repetitive, especially with the fight scenes, which tended to be very like drawn out. So I ended up giving it 3 stars because of that. I did, however, like the fact that there were a bunch of different point of views, which segues nicely into the next book, The Harbors of the Sun by Martha Wells, which is the concluding final novel in the series. And in this book, we follow a bunch of different point of views. Like, we get points of views from so many different Raksura characters, and I loved that Martha Wells was able to give them all very like unique voices, and especially as we have a point of view from a child character, that was really fun. And yeah, I really liked this last volume. It's definitely been one of my favorites in the series so far, which is really nice because it's a concluding volume, that the series ends up in a very high note. And I'm just sad that it's over. I love my murderous lizard babies. I wish we never had to part. But yeah, I've really thoroughly enjoyed this series, so yeah. I gave The Harbors of the Sun 4 stars. And at this point in the month, my cat Hedda got really sick. And I had to basically run around from one vet to another in order to find out what was wrong with her, and we never really did find out. She deteriorated really fast, and in a week we had to make the decision to put her to sleep. And this happened like, I wanna say like before at the half point of May. And after that, I was just done. I didn't have the capacity to read anything complicated, and I didn't have the energy to even pick up physical books. But at the same time, I didn't want to be stuck in my own mind and stuck in my own head thinking about things. And because of that, I picked up The Vampire Knitting Club by Nancy Warren, which Rachel had previously recommended to me, and we found out about it from Leticia in our Stitch and Bitch. And I basically just binged the first 5 books in that series, in the matter of like a couple weeks because they were so simple. The audiobooks were serviceable, and it was just so cozy and simple and just uncomplicated fun. And it was what I needed. I basically just crocheted and knitted stuff and just listened to those audiobooks. So I listened to the Vampire Knitting Club, which is the first one, and in it a woman arrives in Oxford to visit her grandmother, finds out that her grandmother has passed away and she has inherited her knitting shop. And with that knitting shop, she has also inherited a coven of vampires that lives underneath the knitting shop. And they have a knitting club, a vampire knitting club. And the series is basically a cozy murder mystery series with supernatural elements. There are vampires, there are witches, there are wizards, and there are demons. And each volume in the series follows a different murder case in the town of Oxford. And they're very simple, they're super fun and light-hearted, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. So I read The Vampire Knitting Club, Stitches and Witches, Crochet and Cauldrons, Stockings and Spells, and Pearls and Potions in May. And I gave the first volume 4 stars. I thought that it was really, it did a good job in establishing the main roster of characters and the basic premise of the series. And all the next installations in the series I gave 3 stars. At some point they started to become a little bit repetitive to me, but at the same time they are just uncomplicated fun, so I didn't really mind. This is like brain candy. It really helped me through a tough time. So yeah. And those are all things that I read in the month of May. Tell me in the comments, have you read any of these books and what did you think of them? And because I have talked about magic and witches in this video, please leave me an emoji that leave me a magical emoji in the down in the comments. I will let you determine what a magical emoji is. So leave me a magical emoji down in the comments, and I will see you in another video, hopefully very soon. Bye bye!